Hello and welcome to the channel. I will tell you interesting scary stories from Reddit and not only. Do not forget to support the author of the story. I will leave his credits in the description. I also hope for your support of my channel in the form of likes and comments. I really appreciate it. Get comfortable in your bed, put on your headphones, and turn off the lights. It's going to be a night of nightmares. We're starting. My mom runs an animal shelter. I was there all the time as a kid, playing with the dogs and cats. That's how I first met Boo and, in a way, Ginny. I was playing with the cats when I heard my mother talking to someone. I ran, excited to see, since I knew she was showing people dogs to adopt. "Alicia," my mom said brightly, "this is the Wheelers. I think you and their little girl Ginny go to school together." She gestured to the family standing behind her. There was a short, stocky man, a woman with light blonde hair, and a little girl with strawberry blonde hair, holding the woman's hand. She was staring at the cages where the dogs were. She turned her head to look at me, and I recognized her. She was really shy and kind of weird, always playing alone at recess, never really talking. When Ginny saw me, she looked down at the floor and mumbled, "Hi." "Hi," I said awkwardly. "The Wheelers are going to adopt a dog. Do you want to help them find one?" my mom asked me. "Sure," I said happily. I might be a little weirded out by Ginny, but I love seeing dogs and cats getting adopted into loving families. We were walking for a little while. Ginny's parents sometimes would ask about a certain dog, but they never asked to see it more closely. Ginny just looked into the cages, not saying anything, until we got to a certain cage. Ginny suddenly stopped walking. She stared into a cage with an interest she didn't have before. At first, I didn't see what she was looking at. Then I spotted a scrawny black puppy curled up in one of the corners of the cage. The puppy looked at us with fearful eyes. "What's that dog's name?" she asked softly. "Oh, that's Boo," my mom answered. "We found him in an old house. Poor thing was alone." My mom, seeing the interest written on Ginny's face, asked, "Would you like to see him?" Ginny nodded shyly. My mom picked up Boo and brought him over to the rest of us. He really was a weird-looking puppy. His fur was all black, and his ears were far too big for his head. What I didn't notice until I got close to him was his eyes. They were a very light brown, almost orange. It looked strange when paired with his dark fur. Boo was softly whimpering. Ginny's eyes widened in concern. "Is he okay?" "Yeah," I said. "He's just nervous. You have to let him get used to you." Mom sat Boo on the ground. He continued to whimper, but he didn't try to run away. Ginny slowly crouched down, and I soon followed suit. "Why is he named Boo?" Ginny's dad asked. "There was a character in To Kill a Mockingbird named Boo Radley who lived in an old house and never came out of it. We thought it'd be cute to name him that, since the puppy seemed to be born in that old house on Wilson Street and never left it. We still don't know what happened to his mother or siblings," my mother replied. Boo had calmed down and was now looking at us, still very cautious of us. Ginny slowly reached out her hand. Boo backed away at first. I was going to call him back when Ginny began talking. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." She said it so softly I almost couldn't hear her. I get scared when I meet new people too. It's mostly okay in the end. Boo looked at her, and then, with some hesitation, came back closer. Ginny gently patted him on the top of his head, her fingers just brushing the top of his head. Boo sniffed her hand, and then began licking it. Ginny giggled. I think it was the first time I ever heard her laugh. She started really petting him, and Boo seemed to enjoy it. Our parents, who were distracted by their own conversation, heard Ginny's laugh. So, "Is this the dog you want, Ginny?" Mrs. Wheeler asked. Ginny nodded and had the biggest smile on her face. "Absolutely. He's perfect." Ever since that day, Ginny and Boo were utterly inseparable. Whenever I went to the local park, I would see Ginny playing with Boo. If she wasn't doing that, she was walking him, or even laying down while reading a book, resting her head on his body. It wasn't very hard. My mom had thought he was a German Shepherd mix, and he clearly was. It was also clear his other parent must have been a fairly large dog, considering how big he was. By the time we were in middle school, Boo was taller than most little kids. Boo was a weird dog in general. From what I saw, he was always able to follow any order or direction Ginny gave him. It didn't really faze me at first. German Shepherds are usually very smart and extremely easy to train. That's why they're so often used as police or military dogs. It's just some of Boo's behavior could be strange. For example, when I was in 7th grade, I went to the park with my friend Jake to hang out. I admit, I had a little crush on him. I don't know why, considering what a jerk he could be. While there, we noticed Ginny sitting under a tree while reading a book. Boo was of course with her, resting his head on her lap. "Geez, guess she's weird out of school too," Jake said. "Yeah." I felt a little bad, but Ginny couldn't hear, and it wasn't like I was going to say it to her face. She's the only person I know who likes to be alone, well, except for the dog. I looked back at Ginny, and I jumped just a little. Ginny was still engrossed in her book, but Boo was now staring at me and Jake. I thought he was going to look around or rest his head on Ginny's lap again. However, he just kept staring at us. Ha 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 ha. Looks like we pissed off the dog. Jake seemed completely at ease under Boo's glare. Maybe if we go over and mess with her, the dog will be the one to tell us off. I was going to roll my eyes when suddenly I heard loud barking. I turned my head back to the tree and there was Boo, still looking at us, up on his feet, barking with vigor. Ginny seemed surprised by Boo's outburst and was trying to calm him down. Boo continued to bark, his eyes never once straying from us. Ginny eventually just led Boo away from the park. Jake and I were a bit perplexed by this, but didn't think much of it. However, for the next 2 years, whenever Jake or I would see Boo, he would glare at us, assuming dogs are capable of that, and would bark if either of us approached Ginny. Me and Ginny weren't really friends. Ginny wasn't really friends with anyone. No one was ever mean to her face at least, but she seemed to be more at ease and talkative when interacting with teachers than with other students. Maybe that's why a teacher agreed to drive her home after she got a nasty sprain while in gym class. We lived in a very small town, and Ginny's house was so close to the high school that she could walk to it. After a call to her mother, the teacher said she would gladly drive Ginny home. The teacher needed someone to walk Ginny out of the school while she got her keys. I volunteered to do so. I want to say I did it because my mom always taught me to help people, but I would be lying if I said cutting class wasn't an incentive to help her. I let her lean on me as I brought her out of the school and near the parking lot. Ginny then sat down on a bench, wincing a bit, as she pressed a bit on her injured ankle. As with the rest of the walk before, we waited in awkward silence. That was pretty common with Ginny. "Why can't your parents pick you up?" I was so desperate to end the silence, and I blurted that out. I immediately regretted it because it sounded so rude. Ginny looked like she was surprised I talked to her. She then looked down, avoiding eye contact. This was also very common for Ginny. "My mom and dad both work during the day," Ginny mumbled. "They work a lot in general. Not that I mind or anything." She added that part quickly, as if she was embarrassed. The awkward silence dragged on for a couple of more seconds. I considered just telling Ginny, was I going back to class, and leaving. The teacher was going to come back any minute now anyway. Ginny wouldn't care. She clearly was as uncomfortable with this as I was. Before I could speak, though, I heard barking. To my shock, Boo bounded down the parking lot, tail wagging. Ginny's entire face lit up. "Boo!" Boo came up to Ginny. Ginny happily petted him. She seemed so much more alive than she had been. She giggled as Boo licked her face. It reminded me of the day that Ginny and Boo first met. An old question sprung up in my mind. Wait, how... why... I was baffled at how Boo was able to find the high school. Never mind. How he knew Ginny was in this exact area, at this exact time. Ginny was very relaxed about the situation, and almost seemed amused at my confusion. Boo always knows when I need help, and he always comes to me, although he shouldn't have come here. You could have gotten hurt on the way here. She said that last part to Boo in a tone one might use for young children. Boo barked, still more happy to be with his owner than heeding anything she might say. Boo then turned briefly to give me one of his now signature weirdly cold looks. He went back to comforting his owner. I saw an opportunity to finally ask a question I've been dying to ask. Ginny, could I ask you something? I was hesitant to ask, but this question had been nagging me for years at this point. Why did you choose Boo? Ginny looked a bit surprised, but she seemed much more at ease than before. She looked down at Boo. Well, you know how he was curled up by the wall when we first saw him? Boo looked small and fragile and scared. I guess I felt bad for him. Then your mom said that they found him all alone. Ginny stroked Boo's head, her eyes downcast. I realized why he was acting like that. He was lonely, and he didn't know if he would ever stop feeling that way. Her eyes flickered away to the right. I guess I knew what that could feel like. So I thought maybe we could cure each other's loneliness. A soft smile formed on her face, looking at her dog with pure joy. It worked. Boo barked happily in seeming agreement with her. I was floored. I always thought Ginny liked being alone. I never would have thought that her isolation wasn't self-imposed, or at least something she disliked. She looked like anyone else while she was playing with Boo. You need to go home now, Boo, Ginny said to him. I promise I'll be fine until then. Boo looked like he wanted to stay, but he dutifully started leaving. I wanted to talk to Ginny before Boo left, and she returned to being so quiet. Hey Ginny, I'm having a pool party on Saturday. Do you want to come to it? If your ankle is healed, I mean, I said quickly. Ginny's mouth opened in shock. Really? You want me to come? Yeah, sure. We've known each other since elementary school, after all. A huge smile formed on Ginny's face. Thank you. I'll come for sure. I smiled. It felt nice to make someone else feel so happy. Then I noticed Boo was still there. He was looking at me, but his stare lacked the normal intensity it had. Boo almost looked like he was studying me. Ginny noticed me staring at him and turned to him. Boo, you have to go. She made a movement with her arm, shooing him away. Boo somewhat reluctantly left. A few seconds later, the teacher came and drove Ginny home. Ginny waved at me before she left. After that, me and Ginny became friends. Not close or anything, but it was still something. Ginny was a good friend. It's just sometimes I can't help but think, if Ginny and I never became friends, maybe what happened that day wouldn't have occurred. The year after Ginny and I became friends, I was taking my little brother trick-or-treating. Jake came with us because he had nothing better to do. My crush on him had waned over the years, but I still remained friends with him regardless. Big mistake. We got to Ginny's house. Ginny was sitting on a lawn chair with Boo by her side. She was dressed in a long, blue skirt and had a flower in her hair. Boo had a novelty shark costume on. Ginny happily gave my brother some candy. I told him he could go over to the next door while I talked to Ginny. Ginny smiled when she saw me, and Boo even started wagging his tail. Ever since the day Ginny and I became friends, Boo has been far more friendlier to me. I gave Boo a pat on the head. "Wow, Boo, the shark is on the loose," Ginny chuckled. "Yeah, my dad found it at PetSmart. I dressed up like a mermaid to match, but I don't think I did a very good job." "I think you look great," said Jake. Ginny and I both turned to him in surprise. Even after Ginny became my friend, he continued to maintain his "Ginny is a weirdo" stance. Boo stopped wagging his tail and began looking at Jake with a stern stare. Just as Jake had never changed his opinion of Ginny, Boo had never changed how he acted around Jake. "You know, me and Alicia are going to a party later at Mallory's place. You can come if you want." Jake was acting way too nice. This should have set off alarm bells, but I was just happy he was being nice to Ginny. "I don't know. I mean, I'm not good at parties." Ginny looked down. "It will be fun, I promise," I said. Ginny never really went out much, so I was trying to help her. Ginny put her hand on Boo's head, as if it helped her build courage. "Okay, I'll ask my parents if I can go." They said yes, they shouldn't have. Mallory's party was going great. Everyone was having fun. Ginny came a bit later than everyone else. She stayed close to me and didn't really talk to anyone else. She was starting to open up a little when Jake showed up, 2 drinks in his hand. He handed one to me and one to Ginny. Ginny wrinkled her nose when she took a sip of her drink. I didn't drink mine at first. We all started to go to Mallory's backyard to hear a local band made up of kids from our school. I figured Ginny was behind me. I was talking to some of my other friends when I took a sip of my drink. I immediately spit it out. I had thought it was apple cider, but upon tasting, I realized it was really another drink they were serving at the party. Beer. I also remembered Ginny had been given a cup of this also. I knew she never drank beer before, so she might not even know she was drinking it. I frantically scanned the yard for her, but couldn't see her anywhere. My blood ran cold when I realized that I couldn't see Jake anywhere either. My friends tried to ask me what was wrong, but I was already running towards the door. I entered the house and made my way to the living room, where I last saw Ginny. I was about to call out Ginny's name when I heard 2 voices arguing with each other. "Let me go," a feminine voice said. It was clearly Ginny's voice. She might have been trying to yell, but her words were slurred and she sounded disoriented. "Come on, it'll be fun," a male responded. It was definitely Jake. I ran into the living room to see Ginny and Jake standing near the top, the stairs. Jake was holding Ginny's wrist. Ginny was swaying a bit. She looked down and called out, "Alicia!" "Go away, Alicia. It's not big deal." From the tone of his voice, I think Jake was a little drunk too. "Let go of her." I began climbing the stairs, eventually getting to the top. Jake had backed up quite a bit. He was still holding Ginny's wrist. "Boo, I want Boo," Ginny slurred. I began to wonder if he actually put something in that drink he gave Ginny. "Will you shut up?" he said to Ginny. Jake then turned to me. "Come on, Al. I was just going to make the freak do some embarrassing stuff and post it online. It's going to be funny." "No, it won't," I said. "Let her go." Jake was about to respond when noises started coming from the front door. It sounded like scratching on the door, then loud barking and growling. "What the hell?" Jake asked. I almost had to agree with him. Boo! Ginny happily yelled. While he was distracted, I started towards them. The barking only got louder. Jake saw what I was doing. I guess he started to get angry at us for ruining his fun. Fine, take the freak. Jake then shoved Ginny towards me. He shoved her so hard that she flew right past me and into the wall. She was right by the stairs. Ginny tried to regain her balance, but she was drunk and scared. It all happened so fast. Too fast. Ginny slipped and fell down the stairs. Within seconds, she was lying at the foot of stairs. She was completely motionless. Ginny! I yelled. I quickly made my way down the stairs. Right as I reached her, the front door busted open. Boo came charging at Ginny's body. He started frantically licking her, then nudging her head. Boo tried everything to get Ginny to stir, but she didn't move at all. After a while, Boo began whimpering before letting out the most mournful howl I had ever heard. I went closer, hoping against hope that Ginny was just unconscious. I saw that her neck was bent at an unnatural angle. Then I saw her eyes. Oh God, those eyes. Until the day I die, I will always remember her eyes. They were half lidded like Ginny was tired or sad. But the eyes themselves told the truth. They were completely devoid of any kind of light, just staring into nothingness. The rest of the night was a blur. I remember the police coming. They had to pull Boo off of Ginny's body because he wouldn't leave her. I do remember Jake pulling me aside and begging me not to tell anyone what really led to Ginny's death. It was a mistake, he said, then began blackmailing me. Do you really want other people to know you brought her here? That got me. My parents were already going to be so disappointed that I was at a party with alcohol. I couldn't take the looks people would give me if they knew I was involved. Besides, I didn't want Ginny's parents to know just how frightened she had been in her last moments. So, I just said Ginny just slipped on her own. They might find alcohol in her system if they did an autopsy, but they probably weren't going to have one, and if they did, everyone would think she just tried it on her own. I was bad the first few days. I wouldn't leave my room. My parents thought it was just grief, but it was more of the intense guilt I was feeling. It also was the image of Ginny's dead body in my mind. I would see it every time I closed my eyes. This only got worse after Ginny's funeral. My parents told me I didn't have to go to it. I didn't feel the same way. I felt like I at least owed Ginny that. I was doing surprisingly well at the funeral, all things considered. This all changed when I saw Ginny in the casket. She had a pretty dress, with her eyes closed. Ginny almost looked like she was sleeping. But as soon as I saw her, I flashed back to the terrible sight of her body, laying on the ground, her empty eyes. I ran out of the funeral home. I desperately tried to catch my breath. The chilly fall air filled my lungs. After calming down, I felt like someone was watching me. I looked around and saw him, Boo, sitting across the street. His light brown eyes bore into me. I began to back away. Boo started to growl. I was about to go back inside when I heard the door open. I turned to see Ginny's mother peek her head out. Alicia, what are you doing out here? She asked. I was, getting some fresh air. It sounded so stupid I almost cringed. Mrs. Wheeler's expression softened. I understand. I know. You and Ginny weren't that close, but she really does appreciate your friendship. Did appreciate your friendship. Just being near her was filling me with such an intense sense of anxiety. Now I had to see her grief firsthand. I betrayed Ginny in death. I was still doing it now. Lying by omission to her mother. At her funeral, no less. It made me want to throw up. I quickly tried to change the subject to something, anything else. I saw Boo just now. He must have gotten out. Again, I immediately realized what a mistake I made. Boo was Ginny's shadow. Of course, Ginny was going to be brought up again. For all I knew, her parents brought Boo here to let him say goodbye or something. Mrs. Wheeler began frantically looking around when I said that. Where? He's over there. I turned to point where I saw Boo. He had seemingly vanished into thin air. Where did he go? Oh no. Mrs. Wheeler looked devastated. Boo ran off the night Ginny. She couldn't bear to say it. I'm sorry, I said awkwardly. I just didn't know what else to say without spilling everything out. That dog meant the world to Ginny, Mrs. Wheeler said quietly. He was at least a living part of her. Now that's gone too. I could hear her voice shake. It was obvious she was about to break down. I should have comforted her, or got someone or something. I just ran away like the coward I was. I ran all the way back to my house. My parents were right. I shouldn't have gone. I eventually went back to school. The school had a moment of silence for Ginny. The atmosphere around the school felt somber for the first few days. After a week or two, everything went to back normal, except for the empty desks Ginny would use in each class. I started skipping classes I used to have with Ginny just so I didn't have to see them. The desks weren't the only reminder I had to avoid in school. Jake constantly tried to talk to me. I ignored him every single time. Just looking at him made me feel sick. Deep down, I knew I couldn't outrun the consequences of that night forever. It finally came crashing down a few weeks later. It was early December by then. I stayed late after school to assist in planning a Christmas charity event. I jumped at any chance to do stuff like that. I thought doing good things for other people might ease my guilt a bit. I was the last one out. I was going to drive home. Need a ride, Al? I heard a familiar voice call. I looked over to see Jake leaning against his car. He was twirling his keys in his hand. I knew exactly what he was going to offer. I began walking, pointedly ignoring him. I was about to get to my car when Jake drove his car in front of me and stopped. Jake popped his head out of his window. We need to talk. Now. We have nothing to talk about. Actually, we do. He roughly grabbed my wrist. I could deal with the silent treatment, but that damn dog is too much. What? That caught my attention. Oh, don't play dumb with me. Jake sneered. Jenny's freaky-ass dog keeps on coming to my street. Every damn night, I look out my window to see that dog staring at me. I don't know how you or whoever else you told trained him to do that, but I'm sick of it. I didn't train him to do any of that. I've barely seen him since Ginny's funeral, I protested. Jake's grip on my wrist became so tight, I yelped from pain. Jake bared his teeth. Do you expect me to buy that? Jake suddenly stopped his tirade. He was staring over my shoulder. I turned my head to see what it was. Sitting in the parking lot was Boo. Boo was sitting about 20 feet from us. He was under one of the street lamps. In the light, he looked more like a shadow that had rose up from the ground than a dog. Call him off, Jake said through gritted teeth. I told you, I don't have anything to do with this, I yelled. I managed to free my wrist from Jake's grasp. We need to call Jenny's parents. They've been looking for him. Jake was about to say something when Boo started growling. Boo slowly got up and was now stalking towards us. Get away, you stupid mutt, Jake shouted. Boo's growling turned into even louder snarling. I could now see his eyes. The lights in the parking lot reflected off his eyes. I don't know if it was a trick of the light or not, but I could have sworn his eyes looked more red than brown. There was an anger in his eyes, too. I had seen dogs angry before, but this was different. There was an intelligence and malice there that normal dogs lacked. All that wrath was now aimed at Jake and me. Jake cursed and swiftly got into his car. Boo started running towards the car. In a panic, I got into Jake's car. Jake was fumbling with his keys. When he noticed I was there, he began to fumble with his words as well. No, 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 get out. Get now. He was cut off when Boo suddenly lunged at Jake's side of the car. Jake forgot his protests and quickly drove his car out of the parking lot as fast as possible. I was trying to catch my breath. Within a minute, I could hear the loud barking again. I was in shock. Boo couldn't possibly run fast enough to be that close to us. Yet, there he was. I was wide-eyed when I looked out the window. Boo was fairly far away, but just the fact he already caught up with us was nearly impossible. Not only that, he was still keeping pace with us as well. "How the hell is it doing that?" Jake yelled. "I don't know." "Wait, I got an idea." Jake made a sharp turn. The road we were on had walls of trees on both sides. Combined with the sharp twists and turns on it led to many car crashes in the past. I could see why Jake thought that would make Boo lose sight of us. Even I had thought it might work for a second. Those hopes were quickly dashed when I heard Boo's booming bark once again. This time, it was even louder. Jake yelled, "What's with this fup?" He stopped talking the second he looked in the rearview mirror. Jake's face turned white. "What the fuck?" he whispered in disbelief. I looked in the rearview mirror and couldn't believe what I saw. Boo was getting bigger. His bones seemed to be growing first, poking almost through his skin before the rest of his body caught up. His eyes changed into a rich blood red, his irises expanding until his entire eye was red. His mouth was open, and I could see his growing teeth. The teeth got sharper, and drool was dripping from his now huge maw. His gaze never left the car. I realized with horror that he was almost at the car. I couldn't do anything but scream. Jake drove the car even faster. He just cursed loudly, over and over again. Still terrified, I yelled, "Go faster!" "Will you shut up?" he yelled back. The panic in his voice had reached a fever pitch. "This is all your fault. If you never talked to that fucking freak, this never wouldn't have happened." Suddenly, pieces of glass and metal were thrown onto us from behind. I turned back immediately and saw Boo's massive maw within inches of my face. Jake screamed. The mouth was about to bite us. I turned to face front so I wouldn't have to see it, only to realize we were on a turn and were about to hit a tree, which we did. I blacked out when we made impact. I don't know how long I was out for, but when I awoke, my vision was blurry from blood dripping into my eyes. On instinct, I wiped it away. I soon became aware of the intense pain was I in. My legs were pinned by the dashboard. "Help!" I yelled. I looked around to see if anyone had heard my cries. I almost wish I didn't look. For one thing, I could now tell that car had been flipped onto its side, possibly because Jake tried to turn too late. The worst part was what I could see through the cracked windshield. I spotted Jake's body. I could only see his back, but I could see he was not moving. Even worse, I could see the blood staining his clothes and the grass near him. I could just tell he was gone. After I processed what I saw, I began to cry. I had known both Ginny and Jake since elementary school, and now I had seen both their corpses. I heard shuffling outside the window. Boo's feet came into view. It appeared that he was no longer in that huge demonic form he took on before. It didn't matter though. I knew what was coming next. I also knew this was my last chance to make peace with him and myself. I'm sorry. I should have said what happened to Ginny. I was a coward. A sob tore through my throat. I should have been a better friend to her. Everything was going black. I was sure I was going to die. I fell into unconsciousness, and I thought I would never wake up again. I remember being awoken by the feeling of something or someone pulling me. The dashboard seemed to have disappeared in that second. I opened my eyes to find myself on the ground next to the car. The blue and red lights of an ambulance covered the area around. Right before the paramedics got to me, I saw the faint silhouettes of Boo and a person, a girl in a long skirt. I had to stay in the hospital for a couple weeks. I still go to physical therapy every week. I came clean about what really happened to Ginny. People were angry at me, more for speaking ill of the now dead Jake. He was horrifically mangled by the crash, or by Boo. I never told anyone about what I thought I saw that night he died. People wouldn't have believed me anyway. I did feel bad about how he died, but the truth needed to come out. I'm just sad someone else had to die before I had the courage to come forward. Ginny's parents never found Boo. My mom told me they had recently adopted another dog. In Ginny's memory, they apparently said. I'm glad. I think Ginny would have liked that. As for me, I'm trying to move on with my life. Sometimes when I'm walking by the park, I think I see a girl with strawberry blonde hair playing with a large black dog just out of the corner of my eye. Whenever I try to get a good look, though, they always disappear.